First, in Washington, representatives from the Pentagon have just given a press briefing regarding events in Afghanistan over the last 24 hours, stating that yesterday's fatal attack at Kabul airport was carried out by a lone suicide bomber. With some analysis of that American response to those fatal attacks, our international affairs editor Douglas Herbert joins me now on set. Douglas, hi. Now, for you, many important pieces of information released in that press briefing, but what were the major takeaways?
One of the giant questions that was raised in the immediate wake of the suicide bombing yesterday, which we're now hearing was a lone suicide bomber, not two back-to-back suicide bombs, was would the tempo, the pace of these evacuations be slowed down? Would the international community, but especially the pace of the U.S. military evacuation effort, would that be affected, and if so, how? By these suicide bombings. And look, we heard a very determined, shaken and choked up and teary-eyed Joe Biden last night, but still very determined Joe Biden, reiterating what he said all along, that he's going to stick to his guns and stick to that deadline and continue to the evacuations. And we just heard essentially both the military, one of the military spokespeople, and the Pentagon spokesperson, the civilian spokesperson, both of them basically sending the same basic message that the evacuations are continuing, perhaps not at the same rapid pace, tempo that we've seen in recent days, where at one point there were 600 evacuations in 24 hours, which is absolutely enormous. But in the last 24 hours, we were told 12,500 evacuations, which is still quite steep, almost half that number, coming a day after these attacks. So the message I'm getting is that we're hearing basically is that, as one of the generals put it, a massive global evacuation effort that is continuing, that is determined to continue down to the wire, that the military, yes, despite what we saw yesterday, yes, has the wherewithal, the ability, and the resources to continue to ensure those evacuees get out and get out as safely as they possibly can ensure them. Basically, as Joe Biden said last night, this is a mission. He said, those who lost their lives on a mission to save the lives of others. And that remains very much the central component, really, their mission statement, to save the lives, as many as they can, as quickly as they can, under very, very difficult, treacherous circumstances, down to the wire with 4 days left till August 31st.
Indeed, you mentioned those circumstances, and as you say, the stakes are extremely high, but the conditions are perhaps no better than they were yesterday, an extremely volatile security situation there.
As volatile as ever. And, there's perhaps the temptation among some people to say, okay, well, the message was sent, the attack, the dread, the feared attack has occurred. Perhaps now they can return to sort of slowly ramp up again to sort of a more normal tempo. In fact, the head of Central Command, the General McKenzie, U.S. General, basically said in the past day or so that after the attacks yesterday, said that these were his words, very, very real threats remain, and that another attack could occur at any time. Not a hex, not to try to tempt fate into bringing an attack on, but they're basically saying the security situation and the type of intelligence that they were receiving in the hours leading up to yesterday's attack, that intelligence has not disappeared from the radar. That intelligence is still real time, it's still very active, and they are still getting strong signals that this is not the storm has passed. We can now sit back right now. So those 4 days I just said remaining till August 31st, every single minute, every single hour is crucial, and the vigilance is high. We've been hearing the reports today that, there's still crowds around the airport, but nothing like there was yesterday, that the Marines are being vigilant on the inside of that perimeter. There are trucks apparently at diagonal angles blocking the main entrances, at least the south and the eastern entrances to the airport right now, and that the Taliban guards themselves are now about several hundred yards away from that airport and literally not letting anyone, with very few exceptions, pass their own perimeter. So you almost have a no man's land, if you will, or a moat between the Taliban, from our reports, the Taliban and the actual perimeter of the airport within which the Marines and the Marine commandos are basically patrolling. So it's a very touchy security situation, and that obviously raises a question, which is for another day perhaps, but how much control does the Taliban have at this point? Because we are hearing, more and more, and our own reporters on the ground, they said there was fighting throughout the night last night. That wasn't presumably U.S. soldiers firing on anyone. we don't know, but it was presumably internecine, that is, internal conflicts, perhaps among the Taliban and perhaps among members of the ISK group. We don't know for sure, but we do know that gives us a sense of just how tense and strained the security situation is there right now.
Certainly a very fast evolving situation. Thank you very much for that analysis, Douglas Herbert.